All right, let's get to the good from the weekend. It's a tragic story, but it was a great Netflix documentary. You know, it's that time of year now when football's over and you're starting to get into some college basketball, but you're looking for something to watch. Netflix did a great documentary, really a docuseries, I guess you would call it, on the murder of Gabby Petito. She was the young woman who went on a cross-country van trip with her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. She tried to vlog the entire thing, and she ended up dead in Grand Teton National Park up in Wyoming. This was back in 2021. Got national headlines, the whole thing. 3-part docuseries, incredibly well done. Awful story. His family, Brian Laundrie's family, are bottom-of-the-barrel garbage human beings. And there's a lot of takeaways from it. But if you have not watched it, it's not one of these overdone, overproduced, 3 episodes longer than it needed to be docuseries. And I feel like more of them are getting that way, where they're like making these things longer than they need to be. It's a 3-parter. It's like 40, 45 minutes each one. You could probably knock it out in a night if you were really committed to it. But I would definitely watch it because that story got national headlines. And the series itself, I mean, it makes your stomach churn knowing what this woman went through and knowing there were opportunities by herself and her family and the authorities to try to stop this trip. Heck, they nearly had him each arrested for domestic violence while they were in Moab, Utah. But then they separated the two. After pulling them over, they got a call about a domestic assault happening on the streets of Moab, and they separated them for the night, and then they went back on their merry way the next day. Now, it's a tough spot for law enforcement. I get it. I really do understand it. There was an angle on the docuseries that wanted to really point the finger more at law enforcement, but you know what? I don't think that's fair. Her family missed or didn't want to pay attention to a lot of warning signs, and she was like 22 years old. So definitely watch this if you're looking for something to watch with not as much on TV these days. The bad from the weekend, James Carville. You know him, the Raging Cajun. All right, Raging Cajun. His claim to fame was winning the 1992 presidential election for Bill Clinton. He had a big prediction over the weekend, and he claims that Republicans are going to be done in a month. Trump's going to be done in 30 days because of Doge.
And so, Dan, this is what I believe. I believe that this administration, in less than 30 days, in the midst of a massive collapse, and particularly a collapse in public opinion. Della Volpe at Harvard, who's very good. I used to think, once I saw a Harvard youth poll, I discounted it. I've come to say it's a pretty damn good poll. Pretty good guy. He's gone from 53 approval to under 30 to 39. That's a collapse.
So Trump's going to collapse in 30 days, according to James Carville.
He has been like Joy Reid since I've seen him. I have no respect for the guy. He's a clown.
Well, let's not forget, this guy wrote a book after Obama got elected called 40 More Years, How the Democrats Will Rule the Next Generation. That was James Carville. He also wrote an article October of this year, October 23rd, 2 weeks before the election, headlined, 3 Reasons I'm Certain Kamala Harris Will Win.
Exactly. Oh, and he was on TV selling it. What a fool.
And then, let's not forget, as somebody noted to me over the weekend, without Ross Perot, James Carville is probably selling double wides to new parolees. That's what James Carville... I mean, remember, Ross Perot took nearly 20% of the vote, which would have all gone to George H.W. Bush in 92 if those voters were given a choice between H.W. and Clinton. Now, that was, I was a pup at the time. I was not voting age at all. But many of you that are will remember that. And history clearly states that Ross Perot's voters would have gone to HW. HW probably wins a second term. So Carville's considered this Democratic genius because he won Bill Clinton the election in 92. It's like, what are we talking about here? There's no Perot. Clinton probably doesn't win. That's fair to say. But now Carville, all these years later, is like a genius. Based on what? The guy was writing articles 3 months ago about how certain Kamala is going to win the election.
Oh, yeah.
Please, spare me.
Well, and it's not analytical. He's triggered.
Oh, yeah, very much so. That's the bad from the weekend. The ugly Wall Street Journal headline: the U.S. economy depends more than ever on rich people. The highest earning 10% of Americans have increased their spending far beyond inflation. Everybody else hasn't. The top 10% of earners, households making over $250,000 a year or more, are splurging on everything, writes the Wall Street Journal. Those consumers now account for 49.7% of all spending. That is a record in data going back to 1989. 3 decades ago, the top 10% were responsible for 36% of consumer spending. Now they're responsible for 50% of consumer spending. This is what we talk about when we say the economy is broken, where there's becoming an upper class and a lower class, a group of haves and have-nots. The top 10% is growing in its consumer spending. Everybody else isn't. That's not a stable, strong, middle-class economy. And a lot of this is being driven by government spending. That has also goosed the marketplace, and the markets, We've seen great growth in the stock market the last bunch of years. And we all like that for our retirement accounts. But let's be honest, it's not good for the everyday worker that's just trying to get by. And that's where the government spending has allowed the wealthier to continue to maintain and gain wealth, while not allowing and not giving as much opportunity for people to climb the ladder. So all this big government spending, all these big, heavy-handed Democratic policies that are supposedly about the little guy, we tried it for 4 years under Joe Biden, and the rich got richer. And the quickest thing we can do to try to knock down inflation and restabilize the markets, the marketplace, the job markets is cut this government and slash it and burn it. And that's part of what's going on right now. Are Trump and Elon handling it perfectly? I don't believe they are. Is the idea perfect? Yes, it is. And I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt for doing what Republicans and Democrats have failed to do for 30 years, and these are the results. The top 10% continue to have more money to spend and are doing better than ever, while everybody else is getting squeezed. That's not a robust economy for everyday Americans, and it's got to be fixed now. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend.